Отлично.
В отличие от неурядиц с началом.
Ничего. Очень интересный у вас был доклад, спасибо большое.
Очень хорошая. Ну, если что, посмотреть.
Так что хорошая сессия получилась, пленарная.
Спасибо, Алексей Григорьевич.
Как обои свет я видел.
Ну что же. Владимир Николаевич, а будет публиковаться что-нибудь по итогам?
Ну, мы с вами об этом поговорим. Хорошо?
Ну да.
Варианты есть разные, я просто сейчас не хочу раньше
Конечно,
времени.
конечно, но это отдельный разговор. Ну, в принципе, такие материалы надо публиковать. Да. Они заслуживают внимания коллег.
У Елены Игоревны, кстати, к вам тоже будет в этой связи вопрос по поводу англоязычной сессии.
Хорошо.
И имею в виду англоязычную версию журнала.
Ну, это, да, это тоже надо обсуждать, конечно же. По спецвыпуску вы имеете в виду, да, журнал?
Да.
Это обсуждаем, конечно же.
Ну, вот совершим тогда.
Да. Но тут даже вопрос не столько ко мне, сколько к Льву Ильичу, вы же понимаете.
Ну, конечно, но вы в данном случае как участник процесса.
Ну, это понятно, да, но главный редактор определяет все. На то он и главный редактор.
Конечно.
Хорошо.
Тогда и к тому, и к другому вопросу вернемся еще чуть попозже.
Естественно. Ну что, готовность номер 1.
Да, осталось только выяснить, пустят ли нас в зал заседания.
А мы сейчас в подготовительном зале?
А я не очень понимаю, поскольку Галина Юрьевна сейчас сказала, что они в двойном, в смешанном формате.
Коллеги, мы вас все слышим и видим, так что вы не в зале.
То есть вы предлагаете нам не болтать особенно-то, да?
Ой, я думал, что мы в подготовительной комнате. Тогда я выключаю звук, коллеги, чтобы не мешать организаторам.
Хорошо.
Да, коллеги, мы просто тут в 22:10 филиалы наши еще собрали, южнороссийский, Владимирский, вот, и что-то там с камеры, с правами доступа разобраться не можем. Вот, ну, сейчас оперативно все это решим, у нас еще 2-3 минутки есть, а уже нет, уже, да. Так, ну, техника, она такая. Вроде бы тестировали, все нормально было, ну, вот, видите. Я так подозреваю, что это южнороссийский филиал виноват. Они привезли виртуальные шлемы, вот, и, видимо, там что-то точно, да. Вот, ну, в любом случае, сейчас просто тогда через ноутбук подключимся, да, ничего страшного. Так. С другой стороны, коллеги, когда еще появится возможность между собой что-то, да, вот как раз вот картинка появилась. Тигран Анатольевич, включите звук на вашем ноутбуке. И можем тогда уже начинать. Да, все есть, да, коллеги.
Коллеги, хорошо видно и слышно, да?
Да, все нормально.
Right,
видно.
great. Colleagues, can you hear and see us well enough?
Руслан Николаевич, ну, 2 минуты мы задержались. По стандартам королевским это ничего.
Ruslan, well, we have had only a 2 minutes delay, which is nothing by royal standards, allowing for 5 minutes of postponement.
Ну, он пока не созрел до нашего уровня понимания госуправления.
And there is another colleague coming.
Да,
Сейчас, секундочку, одну техническую особенность попробуем поправить, чтобы у нас все было.
Just a second, we'll fix a technical issue. Well, the pic is okay.
Да, и погромче сделайте, пожалуйста.
Could you crank up the sound, the volume?
Да. Коллеги, как нас слышно? Скажите что-нибудь.
Colleagues, how can you hear and see us? Well enough.
Коллеги, мы готовы? Нас видно, слышно?
Да, все нормально, Руслан Николаевич.
Are we okay? Are we good to go? Can you see us? Yes. Thank you very much. Our technical services have fixed it. Vadim Nikolaevich, can you hear us and see us? Yes. A very good day. The regulator is with us. I suggest we start the session. I'd like to thank Yurakov Vadim Nikolaevich and all other colleagues organizing a very important event in December. And it's so good that we have been able to arrange that within our academy and invite international participants as well, and our regional offices and branches. I can see the Rostov and the Vladimir branch representatives attending. So good that we have some of the regulators on board, and I'm so pleased to meet all those people with whom we have the common cause of improving the public administration in this country and worldwide. My name is Korchagin Ruslan Nikolaevich. I'm acting director of the Renipa Institute of Public Service and Administration. I'm so glad that we have this get together today, and this fourth session is titled Quality of Public Administration and Quality of Civil Service. Let me start by yielding to Mr. Korchagin for a quick word of welcome. Or shall we start with the reports? No, just a couple of words at the outset. I'm so pleased to see all of you. I'm so glad to be able to cooperate.
Recording in progress.
With you. Thank you for attending today's conference. I welcome all the guests from here and from abroad. Well, yes, I think that we'll have a common space of development and prospects, and we may keep exchanging practices and reinforcing each other. Well, the Academy stands as a single body as viewed from abroad, from the international perspective, but still inside we have lots of branches, because this is a vast country. But anyway, now, Mr. Korchagin, I would ask you to continue merging the intellectual potential and capability to be able to enhance the public administration in this country. Well, I suggest we should proceed as follows today. I would very much like, given the recent discussions of ours, to ask Mr. Barabashev, Alexei, with whom we have been cooperating and collaborating long in the domain of joint expert activities to enhance the institution of the public administration under the coordination of the Labor Ministry, to share his perspectives on enhancement of the professional capabilities of public servants, and definitely we have a uniform public administration system, and here we should highlight the most relevant issues that merit our attention. And I really want to be by your side. I'd like to be by your side, but I also have an overlapping protocol event because I'm also in charge of international cooperation. Now the Dutch ambassador in the next room is speaking on the improvement of public administration, and I invited him to speak about international perspective and share the Dutch experience. And I would like now Mr. Tigran Zanko to be my substitute, and I will drop in and out. I'll go to and fro, and definitely I will butt in from time to time and participate in your debates, and definitely our branches and offices will also have their say, as well as our international valuable partners. And definitely we are interested in the perspectives of Mr. Vahnin and Madam Stadkova. So now let us proceed with the agenda, and I would like Mr. Tigran to be my substitute as moderator, and now I would ask Mr. Barabashev Alexei Georgievich to take the floor. He is a federal level expert, and we know him quite well. Alexei, over to you. Thank you very much, colleagues. I hope you can hear and see me well enough. I thank you for the trust you have vested with me, and my intervention is adjacent to that of Mr. Vahnin, Leonid, and I originally thought that this casting will not, this swap will not prevent us from intervening properly. And let me now speak and say that my report is about the leading role of the state to enhance the quality of professional education for public servants. I believe it is a key issue in today's session, because no matter what we talk about, the quality and efficiency of public service and civil service, the main thing is how the responsible government bodies define this quality, what they highlight. So the major of ours is public administration, and well, it took us long to come to terms about the leading role of the state and government. I recall back the start of the 1990s, like 1993, with the first educational programs on public and municipal administration emerging. First there was kind of tentative 3 universities, then 5, and now we have 800 universities having courses on that, on the public and municipal administration, and each of them had their own visions on what to train. And international case studies were definitely looked at closely, and we tried to incorporate them into the educational plans that we rapidly developed offhand. And those seemed conundrums for our students. I mean, those cases, and was something alien to them. And when we started our activities to pursue professional education in public administration, the government had little impact. The only impact it had is that it was supportive of this new area of education and public and municipal administration. But later we came to the conclusion that this anarchy should come to an end and the governmental state standards emerged. The first generation, then the second, followed by a third generation. All these public standards were developed under the aegis of management and the economy. And we had the impression that the public administration and the municipal administration was similar to teaching management, but at a lower quality level, with in a simplified way, with less theory and less practice, and it was kind of for making the life of the students of the municipal and public administration easier. So there was an impression back then, and the state never tried to challenge that the education, public and municipal education was something of a lower quality versus the economic and managerial majors and professions. And that shaped the approach, the attitude of academic colleagues towards the public system, public administration system.
Through such an indirect chain of social assessments. I can remember that good students who were trained in municipal and public administration wanted very much to get transferred from our municipal and public administration programs Colleagues, can you please mute your microphones if you're not speaking? Some interference. They wanted to transfer it to economics and law departments. Because training was about getting the inferior education. That means that professionally, those who get purely economic or legal education or any other education were regarded as a priority. This is how the negative image of civil service was shaped. And the state not only made up with that, but was very indifferent to that. So they said that municipal and public administration lies in the domain of economics and legal science, and these consequences are still felt in Russia. The state has to pay primarily attention to the training of the civil servants, not being limited by the extra curriculum courses or advanced training. And certainly, we have to focus on the municipal and public administration as a profession. If we look at the qualification demands, the methodological guides, and the notes made by the Ministry of Labor, they all show that civil servant requirements comprise 50% of all the requirements to the public administration qualifications. That means that these are the graduates of the public and municipal administration departments have to take these jobs in the civil servant. It means that the state has to focus not on the prioritization of the civil service, but also on improving the qualification and quality of training, because the future of the civil service depends on that. And this is how the professional image of civil servants is shaped. If we compare that specialty with the economists and top managers, we have to come up with certain conclusions. Recently, the state being indifferent to the professional training for civil servants is in the past. We feel critical support by the state of efforts to overcome the situation which has unfolded when the professional training in the area of public and municipal administration was treated negatively. The community itself cannot somehow overcome that tendency, but the state can do that. Let me draw an example. The public and municipal administration in the nomenclature of the scientific specializations of the Supreme Scientific Commission of Administration as a science would still be considered as a part of the political science, and therefore it would deal a heavy strike on that profession, because the graduates for the civil service have to have totally different skills, whereas political scientists may act as politicians, and they will perform their functions as complies with the law and as required in terms of knowing administrative mechanisms, which has nothing to do with the political mechanism. Public administration apparatus or mechanism. But thanks to the interference of the Ministry of Labor, thanks to the letter of the Ministry of Labor, which criticized attribution of public administration as a profession to the political science, and despite a decree that public administration was considered as a part of a political science, still, a U-turn was made, some meetings were held, and consensus was reached that this is very inappropriate. And this Friday, when the Presidium of the Supreme Attestation Commission is going to convene another meeting, these positions would be taken into consideration. So this is thanks to the Ministry of Labor that this dire condition was improved. I apologize, but you have just several minutes. Well, I'm concluding my remarks. The community itself cannot cope with that, but what the state can do. And let me proceed with the final part of my report. And I will make a bridge to the next presentation. First, let me share some bullet points. First, we have to provide for influence on the development of the standards, the new specialty ID. So it means that state should not be limited by the control of the professional education and training, but the state has to regulate and control the professional education in the area of municipal and public administration as such. Secondly, the state has to provide for monitoring over the quality of MA and BA and postgraduate studies, because the employer in that case would have to hire the specialists who are not familiar with the work of the public administration bodies. The public procurement decreases several times. It has to increase. There should be more demand for such professions, because this constitutes a major leverage that we can use. And responsible, competent public agencies have to take control over municipal and public administration, because it is different from other professions and requires more attention and more focus. Mathematicians, physicists, chemists, art specialists, historians, philosophers, they all can be controlled and regulated within the existing mechanism, but this is not true for the public administration. And finally, I'd like to say that the state has to take responsibility not only for the efficiency of the civil service, but for the image, for the education, which is going to bring about the image of the civil service, and therefore the state bears a lot of responsibility before the society to show that the public administration system consists of the well-trained and skilled specialists. Thank you so much for this very concise and very informative contribution. I do believe that many of our colleagues would echo what you said.
Да, конечно же, конечно.
I have a remark. I subscribe to what Mr. Barabashev said, and I share your concern. Just let me specify. So you said that the state was not fighting against the poor image of public administration in the 1990s. Some attempts were made. Still, the State Duma, the lower chamber of the Russian parliament, adopted in the second reading upon the proposition of the Saratov Regional Council of MPs, and I was the presenter then, so the State Duma adopted the amendments to the law on the basics for foundations of the public administration. And since then, the civil servants were hired from among the graduates of the public administration departments. It was a sign of recognition that this education is not second-rate, it is not inferior, but is a top priority for that profession. But how it was implemented in practice, that's another question. Thank you so much, Mr. Yuzhakov. When certain state standards emerged later on, you see that despite that amendment, the state standards actually were complying with the management and economics. So in essence, the amendment was ignored, remained a lip service. So that's a different question. Just I wanted to retort that, well, actually, we cannot be so unambiguous. Well, thank you so much. I suggest, as far as we have a very busy schedule and the timeline is limited, there are lots of presentations ahead, and let's stick to the following approach. We will give 7 minutes for every presentation, and with your permission, I will remind you of the time remaining, that end of the session, we have some time for a Q&A to discuss the key questions, to ask some questions, to specify something, to share remarks. Colleagues, if any of you is not able to stay with us until the end of the session and you feel that you have some questions, please tell us. So I suggest that we stick to our initial agenda, and if you have to speak prior to what is scheduled, just tell us. We are flexible, we can change the order of speakers. Do you have any comments? Yes, I have one reservation. My name is Kachagurov. We have 2 foreign speakers, and in compliance with the instruction which were disseminated before, they want to speak for 12-15 minutes. If we give them 7 minutes, that's not appropriate. Well, I think that will support our foreign partners, bearing in mind the importance of the international experience. Okay, sounds good, excellent. And this is with great pleasure that I'm passing the floor to Leonid Vakhnin, Deputy Director of the Department of Project Activity and Public Policy in the area of public and municipal administration of the Ministry of Labor. Welcome, Mr. Vakhnin. Thank you so much for the opportunity to take the floor. Glad to see all of you. It's a privilege for me to take part in that conference. We're speaking about the interrelation between the public and civil service and the quality of training. Therefore, we can focus on a man, people who are about implementing these functions without quality HR, we cannot achieve high quality of public administration. And therefore, we have to focus on how the civil service as an institution is organized, what it is, how we define that. Because people expect a lot from that system. Some exaggerated expectations they have. But we have to... You are inaudible. Can you hear me now? You are inaudible. But I can hear Mr. Vakhnin. Probably the technical problem is in your room. Yes, Mr. Vakhnin, over to you. We can hear you very well. Let me share just my view of the methodology, how we study the public administration, how it is organized internally. What skills and features are embedded into that? First of all, civil service can become an example of law enforcement. This is something which contractual relations usually are lacking when certain things remain on paper, but within the civil service, we can arrange the institution the way that the contractual provisions are implemented. If we set an example for the labor and social sphere, then sooner or later the society will have to follow this example. This is my first bullet point. And the very first thing which I'm interested in that institution when I'm looking at the processes which take place within the public administration. Second, that's the educational trend. We see that there is a demand for tailored or individualized approach. I'd like to complement to what the previous speaker said. The public procurement is shrinking in terms of the investments, but this year we actually proposed a new mechanism, a public educational certificate, which helps to select professional program or curriculum which would comply with the position of a civil servant. Therefore, I call on you as representatives of the educational institutions to get engaged into that work. You are to follow that certificate, and the additional and advanced training programs should embrace all the country, should be applicable to all the territories. So there is another trend for individualized approach in education. And that means that we will come up with the individualized approach to jobs. Our graduates will replace us in the public administration, and therefore we have to approach jobs individually as well. Therefore, it was reflected in the reference book on the positions and job descriptions. First of all, this is something which helps us to take a tailored approach to the public administration and to the job description. And if all the sections of this reference book is filled out in an appropriate way, in essence, a public servant, a civil servant becomes autonomous. It abides only by the law. It becomes like a judge. And this is important for understanding of the public administration in the 21st century. On the other hand, we suggest to revisit the organizational structure, getting away from the stringent hierarchy to a more flexible structure. Such an approach is typical of the professionals, because professionals would like to realize themselves professionally rather than just becoming part and parcel of the structure which sends a message from top down and then from bottom up. And through qualification demands, we can find necessary professionals, and these professionals are few, but we do not need actually a lot of people for public administration, whereas there are just 500,000 of all of us of civil servants, whereas in the social sphere, more than several million people are employed. We have to focus on the training. The public and municipal administration has to be trained in certain domains. Certainly, such specialists may change the domain in which they are working. They have to train new competences. Professional development is a lifelong procedure. But end of the day, graduating from an institute or from the university, our graduate has to know to do something doing professionally. And they would be skilled and qualified specialists taking certain positions. And certainly, this is the way that we can be attractive for the youth. I believe that proceeding from such a methodology, we can raise a question for building a national model of civil service in Russia, which would bring together the cultural features, and we may even find a compromise between the theory and the practice, and it would meet the challenges which are set by the time. According to the classical hierarchy, something is passed over. You're again inaudible. You're inaudible again.
Нет, пока нет, нет.
You are still inaudible. I can hear Mr. Vakhnin. Oh, really? Well, this concludes my remarks. No, we can hear you very well. Thank you. Mr. Vakhnin, thank you so much for a very important contribution. But in the context of our practical work, I'd like to share one comment. Can you hear me? Yes, I do. Certificates sound good. But for the long-term programs, which last for more than a year, for the top managers in public administration, we run into a problem that if the program lasts for more than a year, then public agencies cannot order that. Our flagship program, the Doctor of Public Administration, some of the regulators wanted to accede to that, but they failed to do that. I have a suggestion. Probably we can consider an opportunity of longer funding of such a program. Speaking about training the top managers, this would require longer-term training. It should consist of more modules. Yes, this is a very burning issue. But unfortunately, in the framework of the budgetary cycle, we are limited by 1 year term. But we'll work on that. We'll elaborate from that. These are the challenges to focus on in the future. Let me share one more comment. Mr. Vakhnin, that's very important to proceed to the individualized tracks. It means that we need more diversity in terms of the public administration programs, and we have to keep in touch with the customers, the public agencies. I think that we need a special focus, special control from the Ministry of Labor that these ties, these bonds are being formed. The register of independent experts triggered this process because we looked at as a two-way street. Not just a person comes to a commission to assess someone, but this person would see the real requirements which are set for these or that candidates. And this is how the educational programs might be updated. We maintain a dialogue, and certainly this has been done for the first year only. We have to merge the public administration and training and qualification, for instance. Internships can be arranged for the students in the public agencies. Therefore, they would understand better whether they would like to join the ranks of the civil servants or they would opt for something else. Thank you so much, Mr. Vakhnin. I thank you for the very informative report. And in essence, we appreciate very much this opportunity of continuous daily or weekly dialogue, discussion of most relevant questions, how we can improve the public administration. I do believe that many other spheres could only envy such an interaction. Saying that, I would like to pass the floor to Ms. Slatkova, Director for the Development in R&D Institute of Labor. Are you with us? Yes. We can hear you very well. We can hear you very well. Welcome. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak up. Good afternoon once again, dear colleagues. From the very outset, I'd like to say that my report, compared to other previous contributions, would be dedicated to some specific topic which is extremely important for the implementation of the public administration and municipal administration programs. And it is also important for ensuring the quality of training. Let me share my screen. I will be backed by slides. Just a second. I will share my screen. Give me a second. Give me a second. We can see your screen, but with no PowerPoint presentation. While I'm sharing my screen, let me tell you that my contribution would be dedicated to monitoring of working with HR in terms of cybersecurity. This work was done for 3 years. It was ordered by the Ministry of Labor in the framework of Digitalization program. Why this topic of cybersecurity is relevant, I believe it's quite obvious. Just a second. Can you share the screen, because my computer resists any efforts. Here you are. Thank you so much. We see that. Thank you. As I've already said, this topic, which is related to digitalization, the whole sphere of our department is being digitalized, and certainly we have to be interested in having our civil servants, or they would-be civil servants, prepared for that. The survey which we did, in essence, confirmed the data which are available in the international sources, meaning that 70% of incidences which occur in cybersecurity sphere are to be blamed for the employees. The main causes, the main reasons of these incidences, as you see, that people are opening phishing letters and click the phishing websites, transfer the passwords and user data to other servants, or use the work computer in their personal goals. Next slide, please. Thank you. And we need a systemic approach to that problem. This systemic approach was considered as in several stages. The first stage was dedicated to the development of the methodological system to assess the competences in the area for cybersecurity. It was based on the general requirements for qualification, which was mentioned by Leonid. We also tested the assessment means, assessment tools, and this year we introduced the monitoring tool, and I would like to deep dive into that. In essence, we developed a monitoring methodology, which was based on the benchmarking of 2 settings of results: the advanced ones, which characterize the maturity of the processes which are being implemented in the public administration, joint work, the quality of joint work, bringing together the IT experts along with the cybersecurity experts, and the use of the results of that assessment for feedback, using assessment of competences for further planning of the work. And we compare that, benchmark that against the actual results, actual outcomes. And these indicators are quite late This is how much training was done. This is how much assessment was done. This category of civil servants were graded quite high. Based on the data analysis, we assumed 75% as a success rate. And the control or the reference was the figure pertinent to the human factor induced incidences. On that slide, I would like to illustrate the following. We had four pilot sites. In that spider net, you see the results. Two agencies out of four can boast very good standardization, meaning that they have developed necessary regulations, necessary standards, necessary notes. And we will look at the competence assessment, but which will show that not necessarily it will bring about the results. Only one agency achieved the target level in terms of setting the processes to develop competences in cybersecurity. Others, especially Tier 4, this is the gray rectangle. It shows the deficient level. It highlights the immaturity in terms of the cybersecurity.
One of the problems that was identified was that the outcomes of the assessments are used to a very low extent. The level of the utilization is very low, and that does not impact the decision making on further enhancement of the process. Next slide. Next. And here you can see some data with respect to monitoring part of the competence assessment in IT security, cybersecurity. You can see that the body that has the lowest competence levels has the maximum maturity. Oh yes, and I wanted to draw your attention to the fact that we had 4 groups of professionals under investigation from the governmental bodies. Group A and Group B had no special training. Group A1 and Group A2 had no special training in cybersecurity, while Group B, A and B2 had some professional training, underwent professional training or had a degree in cybersecurity. And Group A, curiously, was comprised of heads of bodies or deputy heads of authorities. These are top public managers, administrators. They had a higher degree of preparedness for digitalization versus the rank and file employees. So their level still was better, somewhat matching the Group B, comprised of professionals knowledgeable of the cybersecurity. Definitely, they had tailored tests that were matching their competence levels, and this graph demonstrates comparison and benchmarking, and we can see that the share of incidents in cybersecurity is low among those who had a successful evaluation results. So here it's the second public authority, which is a federal authority, had the lead in the competence levels, and lowest cyber incidence level of around 1%. So there is the inverse correlation, which means that the high maturity of cybersecurity competences would mean a much lower incidence of cyber incidents. Yeah, so you were pressed for time. Yes, I'm nearing an end. The next slide shows that this is a matrix depicting all the governmental bodies from the perspective of their competence levels and maturity levels. All of them are at relatively high risk levels, and I'll share my presentation after the session is over. And next slide, please. I want to share some findings with you. Next slide, please. And all of a sudden, we have a dropout. Oh, now we can hear you well. Can you move to the next slide? Well, you have said something about findings, and then I heard you drop out for around 30 seconds. Well, no need to come back to the previous slide. I just wanted to tell you that the level of successful specialists and professionals is still in the risk zone. So the trend towards human factor related incidents is still quite pronounced and strong. And this work with respect to the cybersecurity competences should be followed up upon, and that should be made part of the educational curricula and vocational and additional training courses. So we have already come up with the evaluation toolkit, and the colleagues may make use of these to check and double check their readiness and their performance. And well, the parameter of cybersecurity competences is obligatory. Otherwise, we will always be facing new risks, multiple risks that emerge as a result of the evolution of digitalization. And so the monitoring methodology can also be automated, and HR services should be using that, and the regular monitoring exercises must be taken into account and taken stock of, recapped, so that we have sufficient groundwork for future. And I hope that we will be able to shape new and set new trends in curricula and educational programs that will be part of the PMA training. Thank you for a very important report. I wish all the public servants were careful with their mobile devices. Every now and then they forward sensitive documents that should not be sent via open sources and open channels. Thank you very much. Now we will move to a report by our international colleague, the professor from the Calcutta University, Prabhat Datta. Are you with us? Are you with us? We have the interpretation. Dear colleagues, organizers, do we have the Calcutta University on the line? Once we have a technical problem, I think we will listen to this report a bit later. Alexander, if you have the contacts of the international colleagues, please get in touch.
Коллеги, возможно, профессор не включил звук.
Probably the professor is muted. Well, just needs double checking.
Dear Prabhat, can you switch on the microphone? Yeah, you did it. Okay.
I have shared my screen.
Yeah, we can hear you and see your report.
Thank you. In my presentation, I would like to talk about how public service delivery could be successfully made during the first phase of the COVID pandemic in one of the Indian states. Before that, I would like to introduce you very shortly about how the Indian civil services are organized. In India, we have a government at the center we call union government, and we have also governments at the different states, that is at the regional levels. And we had started our Republican journey on a road paved by the new constitution on January 26, 1950. According to the Indian Constitution, we have two sets of constitutionalized structures of governance, one at the union level and the other at the state level. The Constitution was amended in 1992. Following the amendment of the Constitution, we have now three sets of government, one at the local level, at the municipal and village level, and above that at the state level, and at the all India level, we have the union level government. For each of the governments, we have different commissions for the recruitment of civil servants who would be working with the government at different levels. We have the Union Public Service Commission for the recruitment of the civil servants who would be working at the union level. We have the State Civil Service Commission for the recruitment of civil servants who would be working at the state level. And in some of the states, there are local service commission for the recruitment of officers and staff who would be working at the local level. Although the state service officers dominate the seat in state administration, there is a significant presence of all India service officers who hold a preeminent position in the state administrative system. Each state is again divided into districts, and each district again into block. And for each districts, we have all India officers heading the district. Now, with this brief background of the administrative scenario of our country, let me pass on to how the public service delivery had taken place during the first phase of the pandemic in one of the Indian states, which is my case study. Public service delivery had gathered momentum, we all know, in 1990s during the citizen charter movement in the United Kingdom. And in India, the demands for citizen-centric delivery of public services have grown under the influence of the citizen charter movement in the UK. Along with, there was a growing dissatisfaction with the existing civil services, along with the failure of the government to implement successfully flagship development programs, which are meant for improving the living conditions of the poorer sections of the community. The twin amendments that I have mentioned earlier, empowering the local governments in our country, have paved the road for improving public service delivery by putting in place new constitutional structures of governance at the grassroots. The demand for guaranteed and time-bound public services received a new push in our country with the passage of the Right to Information Act in 2005. And significantly, some of the Indian states had already enacted what can be called legislations for the purpose of ensuring delivery of services. And this process had started off in 2010. There are statutory provisions in the legislations that in case a state civil servant fails to provide services within the stipulated time period, then the errant official will be punished. Increased use of new technologies in administration has been of great help to keep track of the processes of public action of all kinds from the very start. The primary responsibility of the state to deliver public services, we all know, gets amply multiplied in times of crisis like the COVID pandemic. In the battle against COVID pandemic, two coastal Indian states had fared very well. One was Odisha in the northeastern coast of India, other was Kerala on the southern coast of India. The southern coast state, Kerala, had done so well that their performance had attracted the attention of the international media like Washington Post. International journals, international scholars had also been interested in studying the processes of how it could be possible. The economists termed Kerala's handling as bargain abatement with stellar results. It was an allusion to successful containment involving very little expenditure. Both these two states have some privilege in terms of having experience of tackling natural disasters which take place very off and on, and utilizing the services of the decentralized structures and civil society organizations. Kerala was successful in meeting the Nipah 2 virus challenge. I think the lessons they have drawn from the successful implementation of the Nipah 2 virus challenge had helped them draw up quickly and effectively action plan for dealing with COVID pandemic 19. In this presentation, I would like to focus on how Kerala could successfully deliver public services in times of crisis. Starting from 1970s, Kerala has been strongly pursuing a social development strategy which rests on health and education. Kerala's model is often touted by international scholars as Kerala model of development in India. Kerala lags in terms of industrial development, but Kerala ranks highest in India on the Human Development Index. It has some unique advantages such as high rate of literacy, good health infrastructure, created and maintained by the vibrant local government systems. And this is, I have shown in my map where Kerala is located. Kerala has functional and tested local government structures down the line in the villages as well as in the towns. They are equipped with functions, funds, and functionaries. They are charged with the responsibility of improvement and maintenance of healthcare facilities. In dealing with the pandemic, the local institutions worked together with the local officials, non-government organizations, public institutions, and the market. They had formed local committees for greater coordination and made use of the new technologies. Most of them had created WhatsApp groups for fast dissemination of information and holding discussions about the ongoing work on daily basis. A study concluded that wherever there was a good relationship between elected representatives of local self-government and the health personnel, the system of dual control and responsibilities had yielded significant results. In most districts of Kerala, the relationship was found to be very cordial and productive. In dealing with the pandemic, the state government officials played a very remarkable role in bringing about excellent convergence of the activities undertaken by the government officials, government-sponsored agencies like schools and welfare organizations working at the grassroots. At the local level, it was done through committees specially constituted for that purpose. The work was facilitated by the increasing use of technology. The local body had trained a good number of newly recruited volunteers who were very useful in reaching out to the home quarantine people. They had needed services at their doorstep. One study had mentioned about their role in a district where large numbers of people quarantined themselves at home. Some of the local bodies had created online websites which played an important role in procuring e-pass and fastened the delivery process. Medicine and counseling services were also provided through telephone. Some mobile apps were also used by local bodies to track the movement of quarantined persons beyond the state limit to prevent violation of quarantine guidelines and further spread of infection. Kerala had a fairly long and glorious tradition of active civil society. The state emerged as the first literate state in India in early 90s because of the active role played by the civil society organizations. A large amount of money was mobilized for the purpose of providing public services during pandemic from the local donors, from the sponsors. Local farmers extended their help to run community kitchens, being maintained by the local self-help groups of the Kerala model. Kerala model self-help groups are different from the self-help groups in other parts of the country because they are regarded as the social change agents. These groups are repositories of women power. They designed and initiated a number of programs like drawing for the children. The state and local government officials had worked together to set up new youth groups, the members of which were trained to help the COVID survivors. The active and effective women self-help groups evolved a number of innovative programs like gender help desk to help women in distress. They provided community counseling services to the children during the unprecedented lockdown period. The elected and unelected officials devised programs like calling bell program. It was a beautiful program in which the beneficiaries were given the opportunity to call them and they were at their service. The groups organized different kinds of competitions for children like drawing, photography, TikTok. The trained resource persons occasionally called the children and inquired about them. The children were also encouraged to start vegetable cultivation.
Professor Prabhat, I'm just reminding you of the time of the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Please finalize it in a few minutes. It's really interesting, but we are pressed for time.
1 minute more?
Just 2 minutes to finalize your major ideas.
Okay, fine. The local government, the state government officials were successful in creating a trust among the people that led to the success of the implementation of the program in Kerala. In fact, the experts agree that an orchestrated, decentralized response systems comprising the political executives and the permanent executives at different levels of government, locally grown self-help groups by women, local health system, and people at large had demonstrated wonderful solidarity. Added to it was the historically developed social capital at its best, which contributed to the relative success. A close analysis of the secondary data and information tends to demonstrate that Kerala has been successful in maintaining what can be called a conducive balance between state, including its outfits down the line, and the society. Incidentally, it was this factor that had played an important role in the containment of COVID in many of the countries around the globe. Thank you very much for patient hearing.
Thank you very much, Professor Prabhat. I need to say that you had a really fundamental report, and certainly new pandemic conditions seriously influenced all the processes within the public administration. Russia and India have really close cooperation in different spheres. And in terms of our academic cooperation, I need to say we have lots to do in terms of comparative analysis in public administration, because India and Russia, federations, you, as far as I know, you have a really unique system of civil service career, and that is extremely interesting for our researchers. I'm more than sure that in future we have more conferences and more research in that topic. Thank you for your report, Professor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah. И мы переходим к докладу нашего.
Now we're moving to our Korean speaker, Min Young Kim, with a presentation titled to job crafting, and agile and flexible techniques and methodologies. So Distinguished Min Young Kim, over to you for your presentation.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can clearly hear you and see your presentation.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name is
You can
Min
make
Young
a full screen presentation so that we see it clearly.
Okay, let me start. Hello, my name is Min Young Kim from Jeonju University. As you can see, I'm Korean. So it's my honor to be here tonight. Not tonight. Here is night, but your time is maybe morning. So today I'm talking about what contribute to resilient quality of work life and performance, a study of job crafting intervention in the Korean civil service. So this paper working is Sang-woo Kim and Tae-jun Jo and me. So my presentation consists of 4 parts, as you can see: introduction, research review, method and analysis, and discussions. So let me start from research background. In Korea, increased public interest in public sector following some major disasters, including the COVID-19, may put extra pressure on public workers, causing them to feel even more stress at work. So according to a survey conducted by the Korea National Health Insurance Service in 2017, not only disaster management public officials, but also other department public workers still suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. The number of PTSD sufferers continues to increase. Although these employees manage an intense workload and high level of job stress, many aspects of Justice Department employees still require strengthening and improvement. Because even though under the COVID-19 circumstance, they have to go to the work, they cannot use some WLB program like, So studies have pointed out that job stress has both direct and indirect effect on job satisfaction, performance, turnover rates, organizational commitment, and work and life balance policy. So like this way, we can infer that job stress is one of the important negative factors for positive organizational performance. So this study investigates how job stress can relate with job behavior in Korean Justice Department. So here, let's move on to the literature review part. As you can see, job stress has been defined as an individual reaction to the characteristic of the work environment, which appear threatening to the individual. So according to Lee, the best way to deal with job stress is not to completely get rid of it, but to maintain job stress at an optimal level. To encourage better performance, job stress have 3 components, which are stress, distress, and stress. So job stress can be the first level outcome of any of these stresses. The second level direct result of job stress are commitment, job satisfaction, avoidance behavior, and job performance. So these are individual and organizational outcomes in the public sector. So although there are many different ways to look at the job stress, we have defined job stress outcomes 2 comprehensive variables. That is time and loss with job stress. So we designate the job stress in terms of time and loss. So here is job crafting variables. Based on previous research, job crafting defined as the physical and cognitive changes individuals make in the task or relational boundaries of their work. So there are 4 types of crafting components. These are increasingly structural job resources, increasing social job resources, increasing challenge job demands, and decreasing hindrance job demands. So in this study, we want to use functional theory to explain job crafting component, but so we tried to functional theory which can sort the variety types of job crafting, but we can only use 3 types of job crafting in here in this study. So when we explain about the functional theory in terms of job crafting, so functional theory have 3 different processes. As you can see, the one is compliance, The second one is identification. Last one is internalization. So based on functional theory, we try to divide into Jack-Querpeting's component as 3 types in the study. So decreasing hindrance job demands replaced as a compliance. Increasing challenging job demands denoted identification. Last one is increasing social job resources explained as internalization. So the first line is compliance, second line is identification. So last component is internalization. So these are 3 components of Jack-Querpeting in this study. So in order to confirm research framework, we use job demands resource model in this study. When it comes to job demands resource model, job characteristic of each occupation can be classified into 2 groups, job demands and job resource. So first of all, job demands can be defined physical, psychological, social, or organizational features of a job. So they put sustained physical and psychological pressure on workers, incurring psychological and physiological cost. While job resources has been defined functional when obtained work objectives or reduce job demands, and psychological and physiological cost or motivate workers, personal growth, learning, and development. So we can simply understand job demands is very negative part of in the organization. Job resources is a very positive component in the organization. So in this study, the authors posit that the high level of job stress will decrease the level of quality of life, while job stress will increase the level of job overcommitment. From now on, I'd like to explain the relationship, job Querpeting, and outcomes which are quality of work life and job overcommitment. Based on previous research, we assume that positive enhancement process, which results from job Querpeting, promotes quality of work life. So in this study, we're using the AMO theory, that is ability, motivation, and opportunity. So AMO theory posits that AMO can enhance by job Querpeting, thus quality of work life could be increased by job Querpeting, while job overcommitment could be discouraged by job Querpeting. So that's why we suggested to these hypotheses in this study. Also, we conducted the moderating effect of job Querpeting in terms of job resource in the JDR model. So as I mentioned before, I already talked about what is job resources factor in this study, that is positive something in the organization. So considering positive effect of job Querpeting on desirable behaviors, we presume that job Querpeting will moderate the relationship between job stress and quality of work life and job overcommitment. So we can simply understand that if we have or person who have job Querpeting in the organization, they even though have job stress, they can regulate quality of life and job overcommitment. So in order to investigate the relationship between job stress and outcomes, we used to judicial public employee perception survey conducted on May 2021, collected from Korean Justice Department employees. So you can see the respondents consist of 443. Please look at the tables. You can see the details of characteristics. Because of time limitation, I wanna skip this part. So here is the research model. As you can see, we use the demographic variables such as gender, age, education, and number of children. And these positional variables, we can we designate something have a effect on dependent variables. So we want to regulate effect between control variables and dependent variables. So we use these positional variables such as experience of WAB policy, quality of life and job autonomy. In here, job stress was designated as independent variables. As you can see, quality of work life and job over commitment were designated as dependent variables, sort of organizational performance. So in this study, we demonstrate quality of work life and job over commitment as an organizational performance. So the moderating effect, as you already, you guys, all of the guys already know what is the moderating effect. That is job crafting, three components of job crafting in terms of functional theory. So I want to skip the correlation analysis. As you can see, we have a correlation between variables. So first of all, let's look at the hierarchical regression result for quality of work life. Please pay attention to step 1 here. It shows that male and older people can increase quality of work life. Also, experience of work-life balance policy and quality of life and job autonomy can increase quality of work life. And look at the step 2 and 3 red box. We know higher job stress can decrease quality of work life. You can see while increasing challenging job demands and increasing social job resources as component of job crafting can boost the quality of work life. But however, there is no significant effect of moderation by job crafting in here. So based on hierarchical regression analysis, we can figure out that what is antecedent variables of quality of work life. So these are results of job over commitment. So please pay attention to step 1. It shows the younger people in higher education can increase job over commitment. So we know that if the public official is young or public official have a higher education, they are more easily feel job over commitment. Also, experience of WLB policy can increase job over commitment, while quality of life can decrease job over commitment. So I think that is very surprising result in this study. So I have to deeply explain the result, what factors, what implication in here. So I'm thinking about right now. So if you have any good idea, please let me know later. Also, look at the step 2 red box. We know that higher job stress can increase job over commitment, while there is no significant effect or relationship between job crafting and job over commitment. So we can infer that under the job over commitment situation, job crafting has no effect. So we try to find out other behavior factor in the public sector. So finally, look at the step 4, red box. Decreasing hindering job demands have a moderation effect on the job over commitment. It means that when the higher job stress circumstances, decreasing high hindering job demands can boost the job over commitment. So now it's time to make summary of research result. The first, we developed an analytical process using research models to clearly articulate first the relationship between job stress and quality of work life and job over commitment. Second, we confirm the impact of job crafting on outcomes, quality of work life, not the job over commitment. There is no significant effect, the relationship between job crafting and job over commitment. Finally, we figure out the moderating role of decreasing hindrance job demands on the job over commitment As you can see here, we can find out the result from that. Second, all the previous research has examined the incidence of a strain using the JDR model. This study is the first to examine the effect of job demand and resource characteristics that related to job stress among Korean Justice Department employees. Finally, we can therefore conclude that public employees who work for Justice Department employees must regularly diagnose their levels of stress to prevent the stress-related illness, as well as enabling to the job crafting to copy the stress in the organization. So even though we suggest many implications in this study, I think that I'd like to suggestion for future research direction. First, I only use employing one single resource and self-report data. So the data can occur common method bias. So I try to, I could have to use diverse methodology in the future research. Second one, I only use Korean data. So I think these result hard to generalization to the other part, especially European countries or some other countries. I don't know. I can generalize this result. Also, in the future research, I have to comparative research on nation or sectors. And finally, I didn't confirm other behavior factors, so such as public service motivation and job satisfaction. So in the near future, I wanna put some more behavior data in this section. So this is all my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Dear Professor Min-Young Kim, thank you for your really interesting and fundamental sociological research. If we here within the Presidential Academy have a chance to help you with some data regarding Russian companies, we are really looking forward to that. Thinking about the job crafting principle, it seems to me that all the professors here within the Presidential Academy work using this job crafting principle, really, having this nice life and job balance. But if we consider civil service, it's really hard to apply this very important principle in terms of COVID circumstances. Thank you again for your report, dear Professor Min-Young Kim. Уважаемые коллеги, мы переходим к российской части.
Colleagues, we are proceeding with the Russian part of the presentation. Bear in mind the time limits. Please stick to how much time I allocate to you and focus on the most important bullet points. I know that any professor can speak for hours, but just would you please share the bullet points, the most important ideas. So please stick to the 5 minutes time limit. And I do hope that you will cooperate if I somehow tell you when you have exhausted your limit. Can you move the camera so that we can see Mr. Baranov, Deputy Director of South Russian Institute, subsidiary of RANEPA. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak in front of such an august meeting. From the very outset, let me highlight two main statements which we were guided by in our research. First of all, the modern conditions bring about new requirements to the specialists and top managers who are working in the civil service. This is my first statement, and the second statement is that the augmented reality technology and other technologies become an habitual component of pedagogical landscape. Several years ago, we were to get used to use the clicker, but now we are using the augmented reality in our goggles. And those of you who are present offline, we are ready to show the real cases, how we may use that technology in the training process, some theoretical background. We are confident that today's bureaucrat or civil servant has to be able to think, has to understand the rules of the game, understand, analyze the importance and the cause-effect of the decisions made. They have to realize their place in the public administration system and understand how the system itself operates. And finally, they have to have necessary practical skills, the professional unique competences, which can be gained only in a practice-based mode. Next, cognitive skills, ability to skill, can be mastered within BA programs. A deep understanding of the specific features and professional requirements could be trained in MA programs, but the practical skills would be gained in the real practical professional activity, and this is something that has to be mastered and trained. Such a training is possible when extra and advanced training programs are being offered, and training simulators may contribute, may facilitate a seamless process of avoiding mistakes or fear of negative outcomes, which naturally would be demanded for in the work of the public authorities. Next slide shows our practical experience. We, as an institute, developed a training simulator, a virtual simulator, to train the members of the territorial electoral committees. And more than 3,000 people took part in that, and certainly they got some results. And now we are promoting this product which we have developed. We registered that in Rospatent, Russian Patent Authority. The patent belongs to the Russian Academy of Public Administration, and we entered that into the registry of software and placed it on an IT platform, which is called SmartTech, which is being supported by the Strategic Initiatives Agency. And any region on certain terms may assume that practice for further replication. And usually we bring about the cases that the members of the Territorial Electoral Committee are encountering during the ballot day. These citations are aimed not only at gaining skills in the area of law enforcement and regulation, but this is what brings about the skills in abnormal situations. Most of such cases are dedicated to these abnormal situations, or emergency situations. A number of cases was dedicated to the development of effective communication with different categories of stakeholders. Following the results of implementation of our simulator, we may note that this tool is quite efficient. It is practice-driven, and it provides for visualization of the training process, and certainly this helps to immerse into the practical activity. Training through work, it makes the training process more efficient and more interesting, more exciting. Augmented reality technology helps to safely train your skills, and we believe that you'd rather give it a try and make a mistake, but you'll remember that for the rest of your life. But the development of such simulators through the extra and advanced training programs facilitates more profound skills. And as I said, we're ready to show really how these simulators can be used in practice. Mr. Barano, thank you so much, and thank you for sticking to the time limit. I hope that on the sidelines of our conference, we'll play with that. And besides, me and Igor, we held a webinar for the participants of the All-Russian Olympiad called I'm a Professional in Public Administration. It would be great in one of the subsequent stages, we could offer such interactive tests, how the contenders would act in such a simulated situation. And saying that, I would like to pass the floor to our colleagues. As far as I understand, it would be a joint hybrid presentation to be delivered by the representatives of the Vladimir subsidiary of RANEPA. Offline, we have Ms. Starikova, Deputy Director of Vladimir subsidiary of RANEPA. And online, we would be joined by Ms. Tikhonyuk, Deputy Chair of Economics of Vladimir subsidiary of RANEPA, and Mr. Kislakov, Head of the Cluster Analysis Lab. The report would be dedicated to the future of using the methods of predictive analytics in public administration on the example of the development of the regional strategy for the foreign economic activity. Over to you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak in front of you, to come to you, to see you. And today, our main problem, the main challenge that we try to address all together in the Vladimir region, this is about some controversy. At the moment, Vladimir region, which neighbors Moscow, is rated 32 in terms of the quality of life. It is ranked 58 in terms of the average income per capita. And the main problem that the region is running into is the migration outflow. Low take-home pay, low incomes, and amid the COVID, they decreased even more, but still over the 2020, Vladimir region saw the historically high rates of growth of our industry, which is above the Russian average. We have such a disbalance. On the one hand, people are going to other regions to work because of the low incomes in the region, but jobs are being created similarly, and we see a rise in the industrial output. Therefore, the public administration has to address that disbalance. This is very much possible due to the development of such sectors, which would provide for the biggest increase in growth. First of all, we're betting on the foreign trade, the companies which can get access to the foreign markets. And foreign trade activity is the key amid the digital transformation and globalization of the international markets. In most regions, including the Vladimir region, the foreign economic activity is based on the infrastructure which is not capable of addressing the lagging behind backwardness of our economy. We have to transfer to the development of a real strategy of the foreign trade activity in the region. You see that we are lagging very much behind in terms of imports and exports. We need the methods that would facilitate the export-driven enterprises. We proceed from the following assumptions. First of all, our hypothesis or assumption consists of the predictive analytics machine learning and data processing, they can be used in order to develop the strategy for the foreign trade activity. We have to build the prognostication models in order to define the evolution of the market situations, to study the trade commercial profile of different other regions and countries. I'm passing the floor to Ms. Tikhonyuk, who will tell you more about the techniques which were developed and how our research went on. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I hope that you can hear me well. Yes, we can hear you very well. That's excellent. On that slide, I can see the methodology, the technique which we use to start our research. This is a monitoring system which is a part of the digital twin in the region. We suggest the two-tier model with two quarters. The first of all is about aggregated model to monitor the existing indicators, and the second quarter helps to describe the modeling proceeding from the CRISP model, which is being used to digitalize the regions. Next slide, please. Special importance when developing the digital twin is played by the choice of the indicators. On that slide, we see the main indicators which are being used. This one. Here you may find two main tiers of indicators, the ones which are being used at the moment, the main parameters which are being analyzed when developing the current strategies, incumbent strategies, and the foreign trade indicators which are acknowledged by the international community. These indicators help us to understand the specific features of the commercial profile of the region and why we need that. These indicators were already analyzed back in 2017 by Mr. Lubimov, one of the founders of that domain in Russia. And further on, we started working with these parameters in more depth. On the next slide, we show the current situation in Vladimir region, proceeding from the basic indicators and parameters, and we looked at how now the prognostication model is working. We are using scenario retrospective forecasting. The strategic documents of Vladimir region rests on such a modeling. Besides, we see that the structure of the region's expert actually is connected to timber and lumber. And we describe the export portfolio which is being used and what countries we're exporting our products to. And we're not complacent. We did not stick to these parameters only. We suggested other parameters which might be of some help for us in order to analyze the commercial profile. For instance, on that slide, you may see the comparative advantage, where RCA indicator. If RCA is more than one, it means that the stakeholder is an effective exporter of the product. And it helps us to say that this product has a competitive edge in terms of export. If we look at Vladimir region, we made calculations in two tiers. First of all, we calculated regional RCA, RCAR. This is how the regional export is compared against other regions in Russia. And the second RCA is the global one, when the Vladimir regional RCA is compared against other countries. We took actually the 6-digit indicator of the foreign trade products and fiber optics. For instance, this is one of our best products. It has the highest RCA index, and we can use that commodity for building the export portfolio of the region. We have a competitive edge as far as we have supply chain, partnerships, production chain, and the region may specialize in exporting several categories of products. That means that the basket, export basket of that region is less diversified. Next indicator, which we calculate within our analytics, is called the similarity indicator. When we see a cluster, we do not see that cluster yet. We look at what products are being exported by some stakeholders and which products are exported rarely. This is called the proximity indicator on that slide. We see an example of such a product, glass kitchenware, which Vladimir region exports a lot. In blue, these are the products which are effectively exported by the region, and gray stands for the products which don't have that competitive edge. We see that we have to complement our export products with several codes of foreign trade activity, which would offer more efficiency for export. So the export is not our hallmark, but we can improve that. Next slide shows the diversification of our export basket. We skip that slide. So this is a comparative study which helps us to estimate how many high-tech products are there. And the higher this indicator is, the faster we may master such high-tech products, more technologically advanced products. In terms of the potential for sophistication, Vladimir is ranked 38th. Comprehensive analysis, next slide, which was done in the framework of the grant, in the framework of the evidence-based politics, shows that we have a very good balance of high-tech products and competitive products.
It allows us to further develop the potential of the Vladimir region. Our export is moderately diversified, and from the perspective of the potential of elaborating and sophisticating our exports will lag behind other regions, as our export basket lacks the necessary complexity. For building the predictive model, we use the machine learning algorithms, including advanced gradient boosting methods and deep learning based on the neural network and probability programming. And next slide. Projection models were elaborated by our master course students as part of the evidence-based policies grant, and we work together with the Center of Promising Solutions, and we can conclude that the decision-making based on the evidence and take into account the changeability trends and main flows of exports can help us develop separate sectors of the economy and boost the region's capability of exporting capability. That brings my presentation to an end. Thank you very much, Natalia and Tatiana. So after your intervention, one gets convinced that the scientific basis of the external economic activities in the Vladimir region are in the firm hands. So now over to the western branch of Higgs, Larissa Karama, head of the Department of Public and Municipal Administration of the western branch of RNIPA. Hello, dear colleagues. I will share my screen, if I may. Just a second. I'm aware of the time confines, so I will try to be as brief as possible. My report is dedicated to the current challenges of training managers and administrators in the conditions of digital transformation of public administration. And definitely it's about introducing the digital government concept, and I will dwell at several aspects to say that the active use of the state-of-the-art digital technologies and solutions would change our routines and activities. It means redesigning and rethinking of the main activities of ours to rely on end-to-end technologies like big data, AI, distributed information storage systems, and well-developed wireless data transfer solutions. In the past year, because of the pandemic, the global economy slumped 4.3%, and many countries spent periods in lockdowns, but at the same time, that gave a boost to digitalization, and digital sectors, online trade and remote learning and remote work acquired a new wind and were commercialized. Today, one of the main obstacles towards the digital government is the lack of high-skilled manpower and qualified personnel that would have the Internet of Things and AI-related skills. To the same effect, the studies of HSC speak, as well as the scholars and experts from the Center of Training Professionals for Digital Transformation of RENIPA branches. And we also bumped into that problem, which is a huge problem. So we were short of experts for that program. These are unique professionals, 1 in a million, and still RENIPA has the lead in training public administrators, and we are to tweak and streamline the training and education system for public administration. And a hallmark of those programs would be shaping the following skills and competences: application and deployment of end-to-end technologies for this and solutions for the sake of development of information society and shaping national digital economy, take systemic and efficient decisions based on the data and evidence-based in the context of interaction between the government, the business community, and the society. Perceiving public administration as a functional digital platform ecosystem, run the changes as part within the process of digital transformation, and develop human capital for the sake of tapping into the infrastructure. And definitely what we need is the new state-of-the-art management and administration technologies and solutions. We need new professionals that would be agile and capable of learning quickly, having the creative mindsets and knowledgeable of the digital solutions, and having all the digital skills necessary for state and public and municipal administration. We have a special program that would be able to project and implement new digital technologies and solutions, fitting them into public administration, the public administration system. And RENIPA has a nationwide network of branches. Hence, we can train professionals worldwide, countrywide, and our Western office and branch is in active interaction with others. So we are a keen and active participant of the process, and I'd like to give a special thanks to Mr. Karchagin and Madam Bishkinska and Mr. Moskalov and heads of a bachelor's and master's courses in these offices. Thank you for the info and methodological support. Thank you for incentivizing us. Thank you for preparing the necessary context and environment for training public administrators from that would be competitive from the perspective of the global requirements. And we implemented that project with an active participation of the regional government of Kaliningrad and the Digitalization Councillor Sibirov, head of the Department for the Development of Digital Government, also took active part in our undertakings, as well as other regional experts and officials. Thank you very much. We hope we will be successful, will accomplish the goals and deploy the new course altogether and completely to the full. Thank you very much. I hope and I'm sure that many of the colleagues you have mentioned heard what you said, because they are on the line, and Igor is also with us, and we have one and the same cause, and we are committed to it, which is very important. With your permission, I'd like to move to the final presentation. And that report will be about sustainability and stability of the governmental bodies and public authorities. Despite the political continuity, the system and the structure of executive authorities on the federal and regional levels is subject to constant changes. We have calculated the pace of that change, and starting from 2004, where on average every 90 days, starting with 2004, every 90 days, a ministry or a service or an agency is either set up or dismantled or merged with something else. But, that has an impact on the lives and fates and careers of public servants. And very often we talk about the changes that happen inside those structures, and sometimes they are carried out as a result of the under the carpet internal scramble or struggle in those structures. So the stability here would be crucial. So what we need to avoid is excessive changeability of structures. It is not about cementing the overall system or structure and turning down and rejecting any change, which is not our ultimate goal. Well, the static situation for quite a long while would also result in negative after effects and repercussions for the system of public administration. But the system is not a test range or a test ground for new methodologies and techniques, and administration and managerial teams will supersede each other, but that doesn't mean that all of them have to overhaul the system altogether. No major upheaval is needed each time, and we carried out some studies of the executive authorities and received stunning findings. With a formally legal approach, we can single out 55 different types of different executive authorities in the regions. Like a region may have a state and a regional and a governmental service and the service, simpler service on the same subject matter. That probably means something. This is for a purpose. But still, if we merge them, there will be around 11 types of different governmental and public administration bodies. So the federal tier has one classification, and the regional sub-tiers have those of their own. And the functions thereof would be different, and this huge plethora and diversity would be quite surprising and bewildering. And if we look at the Republic of Tatarstan, they have 13 types of regional executive authorities. Whether there is a need for that is an open question. Hence, we may invoke like the example of a car with different shape of wheels, having a round wheel, a triangular wheel, and a square-shaped wheel, and such a car would not be able to move properly along the road. So we are aware that this extremely complex structure is something redundant, excessive by nature. And the State Duma, which is our parliament, is now hearing in draft federal law on the common principles of public administration in the regions. And some of its tenets on the regional, for example, healthcare bodies would give and yield positive change, I think. So for us to have a single, uniform, stable, comprehensive, holistic system of public administration, we need the uniform framework on the federal level. It should not be binding or mandatory, but it should be like a reference, a benchmark for the regions, for them to reform their systems of executive authorities. There is a conviction that despite all the differences in public administration in the Primorsky region and Krasnodar region, they have more in common than what divides them and distinguishes them. And the regional legislation has been developing quite actively of late, and quite often it takes political will to unify and align these systems. I hope we'll have the political will at all the levels. I thank you for your kind attention. Dear colleagues, we just have several minutes left. The main thing is that all of us have been able to take the floor. If you have any questions or comments, let us try to coordinate and pronounce them. I can see that some of us raise hands and want to intervene, and we freeze.
Надеюсь, коллеги. Да. У нас
just a question. We drop out a bit, we freeze a bit.
Сейчас Владимир Николаевич. Коллеги, можем как-то технически исправить? Нет?
Vladimir Nikolaevich, can we fix that?
Звук, да. Почему-то у нас пропало звуковое сопровождение.
All of a sudden, we have a sound issue.
Это вы там в кабинете.
Да, все, мы теперь все.
Так, полная неразбериха.
Нет, у нас...
What a turmoil. We're just being creative. I hope you have been able to follow all of that. Thank you very much. And thank you, Tigran, for a very interesting report.
Ну, это же для того мы и...
We have something to talk about, to keep talking about. And this is why we organize these conferences, to be able to outline our future topics for discussion. I have a question to the colleagues from the Vladimir branch. I'd like to thank them for the information they presented and the predictive analytics they used. But it's not about the methodology. Rather, I'm interested in the subject matter. During your analysis, I wonder whether you have taken into account the usefulness of exports for the regional economy, or just the volumes. Because the exports may grow, like the unprocessed timber would be exported, and all the profits remain in the offshore jurisdictions. Or, for example, another option is when you process logs and timber and export semi-finished items, but still the profits are appropriated by someone else in the haven jurisdictions, tax haven jurisdictions. Or there may be a third option with the profits flowing back to the region and being invested in the regional economy with a deep added value. So do take all that into account. Yes, thank you for your question. Can you hear me? Yes, I hope yes. Well, the degree of usefulness is very hard to calculate, degree of benefit. So still we lack the statistics data with respect to where the proceeds flow. But we're now after an optimal product that will help us enhance our welfare and socio-economic development. We need better returns, and we need better and more jobs, and we need higher salaries. Because actually, in the Vladimir region, we have the industrial output growth rate of 19%. Why so? Because Sputnik V vaccine is produced in our region, which accounts for a huge proportion of that increase. You know, we're trying to fit the analytics into the process of output and economic manufacturing. Colleagues, I see that we are designing new ideas and devising plans, and it is so good that we have a lot of follow-up as a result of the conference. But let's get in touch with each other via social networks. I would like to thank our international colleagues that despite the time difference are on the line. Well, the recordings will be available in the internet on the website. I wish you fruitful work, and the new year holidays are ahead. and that is always a possibility and opportunity for us to think